You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm Sherry Lip, the marketing manager at Stimulus Technologies, and welcome to our newest podcast. I'm here with Nathan Whitaker, the CEO of Stimulus Technologies, and today we are going to be talking about private generative AI. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Sherry, and hello, everybody. And I promise we'll make this topic interesting. So, and to start, I think we should start with a couple of jokes. Are you ready for my bad dad joke, Sherry?
I am ready, I think.
And you'll get why I'm telling these jokes here in a little bit. But I spent a couple of years in Peru, and in Peru, there's a lot of alpacas and llamas. And so I thought I'd have some llama jokes. Are we okay with that?
Yeah.
So, why did the alpaca start a knitting business?
Why?
Because he wanted to make a wool lot of money. Okay, one more, because they got to come in pairs, right? Everything's got to come in pairs. An alpaca and a llama walked into a bar. The llama orders a beer, but the alpaca says, "I'll just have water. I'm the designated spitter tonight." They're bad dad jokes for a reason. Anyways, you'll understand why I'm talking about llamas here in a minute. So
okay, so llamas are going to play a part in this.
Yes, they will.
I don't know yet. All right. Well, so we're talking about private AI. How does that, what does that mean? I don't know if a lot of people have really thought about open AI or private AI and what open AI means when they're logging into ChatGPT.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about data security on a couple of episodes when dealing with these public AI models. Things like ChatGPT, especially if you're not paying for it, is a public model, and they're using your inputs and responses to train future models, and it's a shared model with lots of people, and it's using our inputs and publicly available data to train it. And generative AI, let's kind of get back with that, is a system that uses a large language model to generate a natural language output and accepts natural language input. And so, models like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or Gemini, or these models that are publicly available. If you're not paying for them, they're using your inputs and responses and data you're putting into it to train future models. And so this is the question that comes up: is if you're in an environment that you are highly regulated, or you have a lot of confidential or private information that you absolutely do not want to get out into the public, how do you ensure protection if you're using a model that you're not, you don't have full control over? A lot of companies don't even want to um, put their data in cloud environments, public cloud environments, because they're very concerned about hacking and confidentiality. And then when you're talking about using that data to train AI models that are, publicly available, there's a lot of concern. So this idea about creating a private AI system is mostly about privacy and control over the data. And so that's why this topic is becoming more and more available. And then, on top of that, you want to train a model to respond to your business environment. So if you have, a very sensitive business process, or confidential model, or your secret sauce in your business of how you do things, you want an AI system that operates by your model, and your processes and procedures and your data, not just publicly accessible data. And so companies are looking at ways to implement these private AI systems to be able to make it their own, both from a data security standpoint and a process standpoint.
And are there particular industries? I mean, there seems like there's some obvious ones that where they're only going to use a private AI.
I mean, the first one that comes to mind is healthcare, and
Right.
it's really, HIPAA regulations, but also, you're training on, let's say you're a radiologist and you want an AI model that can read, MRIs or CAT scans or sleep apnea studies or whatever it may be. You want to train an AI model on the way that you do things and to keep the data in, and this large data that's being used to train on it, but also the ongoing patient data. You want to make sure that you're complying with HIPAA. I think other things like accounting is a good another one where you're keeping confidential financial data like tax returns. Maybe you want to train an AI model on historical tax returns that you've done so that it can learn to process future tax returns. But that's highly protected data also. Legal is another area I think about too. If you're an attorney working on court cases, you certainly don't want your conversations with a client, and maybe documents and things that you've collected from the case to be publicly available or get out there. So you want to make sure that you keep that in a very closed model. So those are some areas where I'm thinking that private AI really would excel in making sure that data is protected, and it may even be like an offline systems, not even connected to the internet, or at least at, the outside world. It might be connected on some type of intranet for use, but keeping that data confidential. So anything where there's a lot of personally identifiable information, healthcare data, or highly confidential data, you'd want to keep that in a private AI system.
So with private AI, if the data you're putting in is your data, keeping it private, but what about the data? How does the private AI learn? How do you know you're getting not stolen ideas from other sources?
So you're going to start with a starting model. It would be very hard to train a model from scratch. So there's a lot of open source available models that are available as a basic model. Um, Meta, the parent company of Facebook, has been one of the pioneers for this, and this is where the alpacas and llamas come in. So their model is called Llama, and they have a system similar to what we use with ChatGPT, that's using the Llama model, that is trained on publicly available information, and then anything that you use to train it after installing that model is private to you. So yes, there's data that's built into this large language model and the statistical backend that builds all these responses, but then you can train it with your data, and that's the idea. Is you start with a model, and then you can add on what are called and this is where it starts getting complicated. They're called rags, and I didn't make a joke about rags in the beginning of this, but a rag is basically a bolt-on retrieval system. So it stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Wanted to make sure I got that acronym right. But basically, it's a system that goes and collects all your data that you have that you want to use to train the model, and the RAG will pass those statistical models on to your large language model, your GPT system, and that it's using your data to respond to your requests. So it's a combination of, okay, you can kind of think about it as the model is what you sent to public education. So it went through, grade school and high school and college and graduate school, learned everything from the public education. And then when you hire that new employee on inside your organization, you're going to train it on the way that you work. So you think about the original model, like your Llama model or Gemini or one of these other models that you can get. as the brand new employee that's never worked at your organization. And then you use a system like a RAG that will collect all your data and then train that model, or pass that data into the model, so you get more very clear and specific responses from the AI system around your data and the way that you've done things. So that's how those two work together.
And can you give an example maybe of why a business would be doing this? Like what are they going to be getting out of it?
So again, I started with the example on healthcare side. Let's say you want to build a basic model that gets looks through a patient's chart. Let's say you want to um, just very basically, you want to pass into the system every patient's chart that you've ever worked on, and the way that you've um, documented the outcomes and the issues that they've had, and you know train that model on your data. And then when you have another issue that comes up, another patient that comes in, you can use the GPT system, the generative AI, to build responses based off of what you've done before. And it's a closed system that a doctor or physician, nurse can use, to maybe do searches on past history with that patient, maybe similar patients that you've worked with before, and think of it as like a really powerful private search engine based around your data. And then you get into maybe a little bit more complex with a data scientist that can link it into your medical record database, through a conduit called an API that would link to your medical data, and then be able to search and pull information from there. So it's basically a tool that you say, okay, I'm going to tack this private information on, and I know that it's protected because it's my data. It's protected in my environment, and I have the ability to just be the only ones working on it. I'm confident that it's secure.
So I was reading about this a little bit and I came across something kind of interesting though. So let's say you're building a Nathan Whitaker virtual, and how do you that people can build their own bias into the AI? Like you may not even realize it's a bias. It's just your thoughts and your experience. So how would you have you thought about how you train the AI to not be your bias?
Well, the question is do you want it to not be the bias? And I think
True.
that's the idea behind, a private AI system, is you're training it to base it off of your experiences or your company's experience, so it acts more like the way that you would act. And
Mhm.
so we're building in a certain amount of bias as part of that, but I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing either, because it is kind of the secret sauce of who we are.
Right.
Thank goodness there's only one Nathan Whitaker in the world. um, you know the So there's an inherent bias in everything I do because of all my past experience. So when I write an article, or do work with a client, or speak at a speaking engagement, I'm bringing my historical experience to that, and that's what people pay me for, or do business with us as a company for. And so you are building in that bias. I think these public AI systems are trying to, the public ones are trying to eliminate the bias because they want it, generally available for anybody. But there's inherent bias in all of us, and I think these private AI systems can include that, because that's who we are. That's what we're here for.
Right. So you're saying it could be good to like really hone your information, your viewpoint.
Yes. Yeah. But you
Um,
certainly don't want that publicly available out there. I mean, I don't want
yeah.
another Nathan Whitaker running in the wild.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but it would be nice to, bounce ideas off of, somebody that can, search through everything that we've done, and, you know, our memory is fallible, and it's great to have this private search engine or private experience that has everything that we've ever done, and be able to bring that information back very quickly and in a powerful manner.
So, if a business, say a business owner is listening to this and they haven't really even thought about it, how would they get started in building something like this or implementing?
Well, it's easy and hard all at the same time. Meta, as I mentioned, has done a really good job of providing some systems that can get you started pretty quickly. So the framework that they produce is one called Llama, and you could download it on your personal computer, your device, and then you can download models, different models that will run on this private AI system. The issue becomes is these AI systems are very um, hungry for resources. So if you have a basic office computer, with a basic Intel processor, an i5 processor and 16 gigs of RAM and a terabyte hard drive, it is only going to be able to run very basic models. The amount of data that it can process through is going to be much smaller, and the responses are going to be less complex. So if that, and this is where this becomes an issue, is if you want to run a model similar to ChatGPT or Copilot, you need a lot of computing power. And I think everybody's heard in the stock market a company called NVIDIA that makes these graphic processing cards, GPUs, which are highly used in AI. I think their valuation has gone up, 100 times in the last year because of AI and the demand for these NVIDIA processors. A an AI dedicated PC on the if you were to buy a NVIDIA NVIDIA GPU with a very powerful Intel processor and the amount of memory you need, you're easily looking at upwards of $10,000 to start, $50,000 for an appropriate system. The interesting thing is Mac, the way that they've designed their systems, you can actually run pretty decent AI models on relatively less expensive Mac hardware. So Apple kind of fell into this as the way they designed their latest processors. So a few years ago, Apple decided to stop using Intel processors inside their computers, and they developed their own chips. And the way they design their chips is the GPU and the CPU are kind of linked together and share the same amount of memory or the same memory. And so it is by design or just by luck, they developed a very powerful AI system. So it's almost better to use a modern Mac computer to do this. You can probably get a little bit more power for a cheaper price to develop these private AI models. But that's to get started is you need a powerful computer that is able to process this type of data, hold these models in memory. So you need a lot of memory. Some of these models are 70 to 80 gigabytes, and that's fine. We can store that on hard drives just fine, but in RAM, most computers don't have that much memory. And to have that on the graphics card is really expensive. And so you could buy a Mac that has 128 gigs of RAM that's available for the graphics processor for a lot cheaper than you can buy a PC right now. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Um, that converting over to the Mac. Um, so anyways, that's really what you need is a powerful machine and Olama is a framework, and then you download one of these models and you can start on it right away. And then if you want to use your own data and develop that RAG system, then there's another piece you have to stack on, and that's where it starts getting a little bit more complicated. But a user could right away download the software, get it installed, and have their private generative AI working, in 20 minutes.
So with all of this, do you think the trend, going forward and in the future is going to be that this is more and more accessible for smaller business owners?
I think so. If around the right system, it might be cheaper from a technology perspective to have a private AI, and then that gives some peace of mind to the owners that they know that their data isn't going to get out, of their environment. There's when we talk to companies, that's one of the things they're always concerned about is this going to um, is this data going to get out of my system, or am I training the next generation of ChatGPT or OpenAI? And that's what people don't want to do. So
Mm.
using these private AI systems, I think that's where we're going to see the trend going in the next couple of years. Right now, big enterprises have been doing this for years. If you're a credit card processor, or if you're large government agency, or large enterprise, they've had private AI systems for a while. IBM's been putting these out for 20 years, but they just haven't been accessible to a small business. Now the hardware is getting cheap enough. The software is publicly available. These large language models are getting better and better, and there's dedicated ones. There's a large language model that you can download in Llama that's specific for coding, or one that's specific for healthcare. That's been trained on financial data. So you could get these that are very specific to your industry, and then you bolt on a RAG system to make it really specific to your business. And I think that's where we're going to see the trend moving towards in 2025, 2026. So this is going to get down to middle market or even SMB businesses.
And to kind of close it out, can we talk a little bit about how Stimulus Technologies helps businesses stay in the know about the newest AI?
So glad you're here. The podcast, we talk about AI quite a bit on the podcast, so that's a good start. We have an AI masterclass. Right now, we're focusing on Microsoft or Microsoft Copilot. Sorry, there's so many systems out there. So Microsoft Copilot, we have a class to help your employees use that as a productivity tool. And we've had great success with the employees and the staff of the companies that have joined that class. So that's the first step we're taking, is just getting access and using a generative AI system like Microsoft Copilot. And then our goal this year is to come up with better ways to integrate AI and automation inside of businesses and solving those problems. So we have some exciting stuff that we're working on currently, and just be on the lookout for what we're doing.
All right. Well, if anybody wants to know more about AI for their business, obviously let us know, and be sure to subscribe and like this podcast episode if you're watching or listening, and leave a comment. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Sherry, and thanks everybody for joining as always.